All right. Good afternoon, fellow traders. Welcome to Top Steps Market Therapy with Dr. Andrew Menaker. The markets are, for all intents and purposes, closed. It's time to relax, have a cup of coffee or your favorite adult beverage. I think both the doctor and I want to applaud all of you for taking this step in your progress. There is going to be time for questions, of course. At the end, you can put them either in the Q&A section or in the chat room. I'm looking for both. Just give me a quick sound check if you would. We all at Top Step and everyone here would like to thank the good Dr. Andrew Menaker for his time today. Doctor, how are you?
I'm doing great, John, and I just wanted to thank you for inviting me to do this. It's been too long since we did market therapy. It's been years.
It has been years, you can probably ask all of the people who are going to be attending today. I've been so excited about the ability for us to spend some time together, and that's been my goal since I started Top Step, was to try and help traders get better at it, and you are one of the experts at it, and I'm again so excited to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Would you like to introduce yourself? Do you have a slide or?
Sure. You know what I'll do is I'll share my screen here, and then I'll do a little intro. Let's see. Let's zoom. Let's see. Share my screen. And let's see.
There it is.
And let me just get it to the slideshow so people don't have to see the
whole thing.
The whole thing. Let's make it more interesting. Okay. All right. So I don't know how many people know me or not, so this may be redundant for those who do. I'm a psychologist, clinical psychologist, but I like to think of myself as less of a shrink and more of a stretch. And I'm also an active trader myself. I've been trading for a long time, got involved in markets in the late 90s. That's also when I began coaching bank traders. My first experience working with traders was on the Wells Fargo trading desk, actually, here in San Francisco in the late 90s, actually mid to late 90s. So I've been doing this a long time. Prior to that, I had a background doing, just for a couple of years, but it was quite an intense couple of years, had a background doing threat assessment and CISD, critical incident stress debriefing, with the Defense Department, Navy, and a few other federal agencies. And I learned a lot about dealing with high pressure situations, which I was able to carry with me into my own trading and my work with traders. And so a lot of my work is informed by my prior experiences, as well as being a student of neuroscience and clinical psychology, and a lot of other things I've learned along the way from working with a lot of different traders across the wide spectrum that is trading. So that's me in a nutshell. And John had asked me to pick a theme for today, and actually I think it was maybe John's idea. It's a great idea, which is, why do big losses tend to follow big gains? Why do we tend to have like a horrible day or a worst day for sometimes right after our best day, which is a really common thing? So that's what we'll be talking about.
And I'm very excited about it. And, as a trader, growing up, learning how to make money, it seems to happen to everybody. And when it happens to you, you think you're the only person that has ever happened to, until you hear stories and until you have the opportunity to talk to someone like you, Doctor. I'm very excited about it. Most of the people here, I'm sure, are well aware of who I am. I've been with Top Step almost from the beginning, and I've had the great pleasure of talking to and working with thousands of traders. Many of them have suffered tremendous losses before actually kind of realizing there's a lot that they don't know that they don't know. And again, I feel blessed that we have the good doctor here to talk about just one of those topics. We're going to be doing this every other week on Wednesdays until the 16th of December, and we'll see where we go from there. But you know, if I had an applause machine, I'd applause right now. But I'm really psyched to see what you got for us today here, Dr. Menaker.
Well, that sounds good, John. Let's go right into it. And you set me up really nicely because you mentioned how, you know, like you, I've talked with probably a few thousand traders over the years, and we all have losses that follow gains. Sometimes our worst, biggest losses follow our gains. And I think that it's pretty safe to say that all of us in trading ride a P&L roller coaster to some degree. Some of us ride that roller coaster more than others. Some of us go up and down more than others, but it's a roller coaster for everyone. It's regardless, it's just part of what happens in trading. And one of the things that,
I've yet
go
to
ahead.
see
Yeah.
I've yet to see a flat equity curve.
Yeah, no such thing. In fact, if anyone, I mean, newsflash, if you come across someone out there who claims that they can somehow make you into a trader who never has losses or a flat up and to the right equity curve with no scallops, no pullbacks, no dips, I would run, not walk away. So one of the things, the reason why I'm using this roller coaster image for the first part of the presentation is because something that I personally experienced myself in my trading numerous times, and I'm sure John can relate, and probably everyone who's been trading can relate to this, is that what often happens is the down move, the loss, usually occurs very often, not always, but it usually happens much faster than the up move, just like a roller coaster, you know, working its way up the track, and then bam, and we're going down, and it goes down really fast. And this is something that, you know, not only have I noticed with myself for my entire trading career, but one of the things that I've noticed is one of the first times that I was actually out on a trading desk. And not so much at a bank desk, because there it's a little different there, but on a prop desk, in physical prop desk, not remote. And I was there, room full of maybe, I don't know, there's a bunch of traders. I forget how many there were actually there. And what I noticed in talking with the risk manager there is that, and this would happen in all time frames, whether you're looking at intraday or across weeks of P&L, it really applies to all time frames of your P&L, is that when you make some money, especially when you make it quickly, let's call that the high water mark. And I'm just going to use round figures for sake of illustration. This is not mathematically necessarily how it works, but just for example's sake. Let's say intraday a trader is up $1,000 at a certain point during the day. And then they have some troubles and they start to, for whatever reason, they start to give back some of those realized gains, not unrealized, but some of their realized booked profits. What'll usually happen, and this is what I noticed on that trading desk, the first time I actually saw a trading desk outside of the bank, is that when you get to about 50, 60%, 40 to 60%, roughly half, give or take a little bit, roughly half of the recent gains are gone. And I call this the give back phenomenon. My clients who I've worked with, that's how they think of it as well. What happens then is the second half goes away even faster. The velocity picks up very quickly, very suddenly, right around that 40 to 60% give back level. So in dollar terms for this example I'm using, you're up $1,000 and now all of a sudden you're up maybe $400 or $500 or $600. You've given back roughly half. What's going to happen to 99% of traders, 98% of traders, I don't know how many exactly, but most traders, what's going to happen is that you're going to give back, or highly likely that you're going to give back that second half much faster than you gave back the first half. And I have a specific name for it. I call it the give back. And it happens on a very frequent basis. And that's why I like the roller coaster image, because I think it really nicely illustrates the phenomenon. We're ticking up the track, tick, tick, tick. And if you've ever been on a roller coaster, at least the old-fashioned one that we have near here in Santa Cruz, an hour and a half from where I live in SF, it's an old wooden roller coaster. You can actually hear it ticking up the track, and then the down move just happens so fast. And this is what happens. And I'll just share another little thing before we get to the next slide here, because I'm going to address this. I'm not just going to explain the problem and talk about it. I'm going to give you guys some solutions as well, some things to do, some practical solutions. And before I do that, I'll just want to share an observation with you, which is that over all the years that I've been working with traders, and it's been about 20 years, actually over 20 years, what I'm noticing more and more as time goes on, and this is really prevalent now in 2020 for me more than ever, is that I've always had a certain number of clients that are already successful before they come to me, varying degrees of success, some barely successful, but some degree of success. What's happened now in 2020 is there's this real bifurcation. Not only are we seeing like that bifurcation in the economy and in the markets, but I'm seeing it in my coaching practice. And what I mean by that is that I'm seeing right now, I'd say 60%, maybe even as much as 2/3 of my clients that I've had just from this year are people who are already successful, which is the highest number I've ever had before. And so what's abundantly clear to me is that people who succeed at this will pretty much do whatever it takes to continue to succeed and sustain their success. And that's one of the really big differences. And I suspect this bifurcation that I'm experiencing as a coach is probably just going to continue. We'll see how long it goes on for. So let's get into some of the things you can do. Let's kind of unpack this roller coaster, if we will. So, and I'll just say this, as John mentioned earlier, there's no way to eliminate getting off the roller coaster. We're going to ride it to some degree. The goal here is can you minimize the impact? No one's going to have a perfectly smooth equity curve, but the goal is, can you just decrease the frequency and the magnitude of those down days, right? That's the goal. Can't eliminate them. Let's just see if we can reduce the frequency and the magnitude of them. And actually for many traders, especially traders who are very close to making the turn, traders who've been break even for a while, they're actually closer than they think. They often believe that they have to, become perfect in order, or near perfect, in order to truly succeed. But what I see all the time in working with traders is that it's just a matter of reducing in frequency, magnitude, not eliminating, just reducing those big down days. That's the game. So let's talk about some ways to address that. So one of the things that I talk about is confidence, and you often hear people talking about confidence in trading, and I believe that confidence is often misunderstood in trading. Most people think of confidence as one of the first two types that I have here on the slide, either what I would call false confidence or temporary confidence. And let me just define all three types here for you, especially the third one, real confidence, which is really what we want to aim for. And I'll describe it and help you hopefully to try and achieve some of that real confidence for yourself. So false confidence, what that is that's, whether you're bragging or you're pretending or whatever that may be, you just know that it's really not real. And that's pretty obvious to see for yourself. And that's kind of just blatant, what I just call blatant false confidence. There's quite a bit of it out there. The second type of confidence is temporary confidence, which is really common. Probably the most common form of confidence would be this second type, temporary. And what this is it's tied to our recent experience. It's tied to our ups and downs in our P&L. When we're making money, whether it's from our last trade or you're having a good day or a good series of days or weeks or whatever the time frame may be, when you're on a P&L upswing, we tend to feel, or we think we're feeling more confident. And then when we're on a downswing on our P&L, we tend to lose some confidence. I personally don't believe that's actually confidence. People call it confidence, but I don't think it's actually confidence. I think what that really is just attaching your feelings to your P&L. One of the things that I learned a long time ago before ever working with traders, this was part of doing my threat assessment work and working with, I've done some work with special forces and other people who deal with high pressure situations. And then also even before that, when I was working on my psych degree, my first interest was sports psychology. And I actually do have some friends that work as mental coaches with elite athletes. And this is kind of how they look at confidence. They would say that confidence, and I agree, I believe confidence, real confidence, is not about feeling good because of whatever results are happening, because that's temporary confidence. Real confidence is actually being resilient regardless of whatever is happening. So let me just say that again. It's really important to get this. Real confidence is about resilience regardless of what's happening in your P&L or anything else. And in my opinion, it's this type of real confidence that actually forms one of the primary cornerstones, one of the primary factors of what we like to say is discipline, or what people call discipline in trading. Discipline, I think, is actually misunderstood by most traders. I think of it as primarily a willpower deal. And there's some willpower involved, but it's actually more than willpower, much more. What's more important than willpower is understanding and being able to recognize and cultivate for yourself some real confidence. And we're going to talk about some ways to do that for yourself. Before I move on, I'm also going to say that, it's easy to get overconfident, and that's that temporary confidence. When we talk about, traders often talk about it. Sometimes I tweet about it or blog about it or talk about it, that we can get ahead of ourselves, get ahead of our skis, we get overconfident. And usually when I'm saying something like that, I'm usually referring to that number 2 type of confidence, temporary confidence. And what we want to do is we really want to be aiming for a balance of confidence and humility in trading. And that's a very delicate balance. Some of my clients would describe it, and I experience it myself, as kind of like a tightrope. It's a delicate balance. You can fall on either side very easily, becoming too confident or not being humble enough. And it's a very delicate balance to achieve the right mixture of confidence and humility in trading. Because if you don't, the market will humble you really fast. And I'm sure most of you probably know what I mean.
Yeah.
We've all been there. Some of us more than others. I know I've been there too many times for myself. I wish I hadn't, but it just happens to all of us. Oh, man. So, we look at chart patterns, we look at levels, whatever it is we're looking at on the screen, market patterns, chart patterns, indicators, whatever we're using, right? That tends to be where our focus is. And that's fine, it needs to be there, but that shouldn't be where all of your focus is. Many, many years ago, my wife used to work in sales. She's not in sales anymore. This was like a long time ago, like 20, 25, 30 years ago. We were first going out before we were married, like 30 years ago. There's a saying in sales. I remember being with her at some function with other salespeople, and people would say things like, well, you're only as good as your last sale. And that kind of stuck with me, because I think that happens in trading as well. We're actually really only as good as our last trade. We have to kind of reinvent ourselves every time we step up to the computer or sit down in front of the computer or step into not many floor traders left, but every time we're out there and we're going to face the market, it's up to us to kind of make ourselves all over again. We have to make ourselves all over again. And this is because anything can happen at any time, not just in the market. Can anything happen in any time, like we saw yesterday with that drop near the, towards the end of the day, but we can also experience anything at any time within ourselves. Anything can get triggered at any time really easily. And, here's a red flag to be looking out for yourself. And it's something that I'm always aware of for myself. And it's something that I personally wrestle with in my own trading. And I know a lot of my clients do as well. I'll probably always wrestle with it, which is, if you make a lot of money early in the day, what do you do? Do you keep trading, or do you stop? What do you do? You know, there's no easy answer. There's no right or wrong answer. I'll tell you what I often will do is I will at least try and take a break, try and, go get something to eat, go take a walk, maybe do some push-ups, do a little mini workout. I got a little fitness area here in my house. I'll do some journaling. I'll try and really evaluate, how did I make the money, right? How close to my ideas were my executions? In other words, were these good quality decisions, or was I a little impulsive? Was I chasing? What was the quality of my decision making that led up to making that good money early on? And if I can come to terms with that and understand that, then maybe I'm good to go, and perhaps I can continue to trade. So that's a really good tip for you guys and gals. Just because you make money early on does not mean the day is going to go like that for the rest of the day. And I'll say that there's a real big, I think, a giant falsehood out there in the trading world. People talk about, don't be a wimp, you got to carry on, persevere, don't give up. Well, you know what? You got to know when to say it's enough, whether the losses have piled up and it's enough to stop, to kind of recover and preserve yourself, preserve your P&L, or whether you're making money and it's time to kind of stop for the moment or stop for the day. So knowing when to take breaks is a really, really big part of kind of trying to flatten that roller coaster or smooth out that P&L roller coaster that we all ride to varying degrees. One of the things that I can share with you is that, not only do I work with individual traders, but I work with probably more than half my clients are professional traders. They're trading other people's money. And what often happens is a portfolio manager, for instance, at a hedge fund, regardless if they're successful as an individual PM portfolio manager, or regardless of how successful the fund may or may not be, pretty much all of them become really anxious at the beginning and the end of whatever their fiscal year may be. And I see this all the time. It's a really common occurrence. So this is not something that is just happening to independent, self-directed retail traders. This happens to everybody. And I can share with you that it does happen to everybody. The professionals, the PMs, the people you maybe see on CNBC or Bloomberg or whatever you watch or listen to or read, they may not talk about it. They don't share it publicly because they don't want to scare their investors away. They don't want to come across seeming like a wimp, or they're not on top of their game. But they experience the same psychological ups and downs around their P&L that you do. They do. They really do, because I know this from in the confidentiality of my coaching relationships. They share with me things that they may not even share with their own spouse. The only person that may know it, at least numbers wise, may be their risk manager or their boss. And then they often will share with me, hopefully, in the relationship is more of the psychological stuff. This is just true across the continuum of all traders, large and small, professional and retail, regardless of whatever market you're trading. This is just a truism. It's unavoidable. I often will see people, talk about, like on Twitter or blogging or on YouTube or whatever. There's this common idea out there that, we got to learn from our losses, and that's a good idea. It is a nice principle. And I will say that a big loss especially can be a lesson, but here's the caveat. It's only going to be a lesson if you let it be a lesson. And how do we do that? How do we let a big loss become a lesson for us? There's a few different things you need to do. One of them is you need to analyze the process, which is your decision making, not just your plan, but analyze your process, the quality of your decision making that led to the loss, separate that from the actual loss itself and the dollar amount. So analyze, separating that process from outcomes, which I've talked about elsewhere. So that's one thing you need to do to learn from a big loss. Another thing you need to do is be tracking, just like we do in markets, right? Some of us do it more than others, but we track patterns and we keep track of levels and reactions and things like that. You need to also track your own internal patterns and how you react to things, and like your P&L, how do you react to it? That's a pattern. So one of the ways that you can learn from a big loss is if you have, you have to let yourself learn from it, and you actually have to do things to learn from it. You can't just, say, I'm going to learn from the loss. That's not enough. You actually have to do things in order to help yourself to do it. All right, hedonic adaptation. I'm going to leave some time here for some questions here, John. I'm going to try and pick up my pace because I got a few more slides to get through, and I want to leave time for, I anticipate there'll be some really good questions from your group.
It's so good though, Doctor. Continue.
All right, okay. So, some people may have heard of this concept, hedonic adaptation. Sometimes it's called the hedonic treadmill. We see it with lottery winners, would be the easiest example. Somebody wins a whole bunch of money, and then what happens in a few years? They're bankrupt or they lose most of it, right? We all heard those stories, and a lot of them are, they're very common. Same thing happens in trading. Make a bunch of money, whether it's quickly or not so quickly, and then bam, it's gone. So what's happening with this hedonic adaptation, this hedonic treadmill, what I'm going to describe is probably going to sound illogical. Some of you may have a hard time believing it, and that's okay. I'm not going to try and convince you of anything. It's just up to you to believe it or not. But what happens is that we're not actually nearly as rational as we like to think we are. And what happens for us, and this is pretty much for all of us humans, there's maybe a few exceptions like sociopaths and psychopaths, but for all of us normal humans, and I'm assuming we're all normal here, is that what's more important to us is familiarity. Familiarity is important to us because it's comfortable. New things like a new level of wealth or a big gain, seeing a whole bunch of extra money in my account, those are new things. Those are, and they are therefore unfamiliar. And what happens is humans have a strong, very strong natural tendency to seek comfort vis-a-vis familiarity usually, and try and avoid discomfort or avoid things that are unfamiliar, including things around money. I know this sounds crazy, sounds illogical, but it's really true. I see this all the time, not just in trading. I live here in SF, San Francisco, next to Silicon Valley, and I've seen, people go through the cycle of wealth up and down, not just traders. This is true, this applies to everybody. The other quote you see here on the slide is that everyone gets what they want. I think maybe the first person who kind of popularized that quote was Ed Seykota, the first guy back in like many, many years ago. I think it was back in the 80s. It's when he was the first guy to systematize trading, become a systematic trader. And, I believe what he's saying, and other people have said that. I say it too, using different words. What that statement really means is that it's the power of our subconscious dynamics. That statement of everyone gets what they want. It's a really good illustration of the power of our subconscious dynamics, including the subconscious aspects of our self-worth and the subconscious aspects and even conscious aspects of whether we feel good enough, whether we deserve something better. And this is a really big deal. I do believe everyone gets what they want. The problem is most people don't really understand what's happening in the deepest subconscious areas of the mind, because that's what you're going to get. That's what you're going to get. So here's what also happens, and here's where I'm going to start to try and get a little more practical here for you. We all bring our personality with us to trading. We bring everything with us to trading. As much as you might think you're going to compartmentalize, good luck with that, because you might have short moments of compartmentalizing, but it ain't going to last forever. Because trading has an uncanny way of helping us to discover much more about ourselves. And it does that by amplifying our character traits. It amplifies our defense mechanisms, which I'll describe what that is here in a moment. And it amplifies our unmet needs for self-worth. So let me kind of back up here a little bit. The character traits, largely formed in childhood, and issues, believe it or not, I know this sounds like psychobabble, but we are reliving a lot of that stuff in our trading. Not something I can talk about today because that's a whole nother topic. Defense mechanisms. What are defense mechanisms? Well, they're also sometimes referred to, depending upon the shrink you're talking to, they might be referred to as coping styles or coping strategies. I just call them defense mechanisms. What is it you're defending and how does it work? Well, what you're defending is you're defending your ego and you're defending the fear of not being good enough and any potential fragile sense of positive self-worth you may have. And these are attempts to avoid experiences of not feeling good enough. And so we do all kinds of things. And I would say that I see this in my own trading and with every trader I've ever known, that when we have a set of repeated mistakes, we repeat the same mistakes over and over, because we all do to various degrees, that's a sure as hell sign, pardon my French, as a defense mechanism at work. You got to understand what is it you're defending against inside. And whether, whether you're reacting to a loss or you're reacting to the fear of missing out because the market's moving without you, just after you got out, after you booked your loss or you decided not to get in, intellectually, we all know that that's part of trading and we shouldn't overreact to that. And we have this plan and we have this post-it note that says, be patient, or it says, accept losses, or it says, wait for my entry, or whatever your note says. But why is it that we still have extremely strong reactions to when these things happen? Well, A, it's because we're all humans, and that the reactivity to loss and missing out and things like that is very, very strong because of these three things: our character traits, our defense mechanisms, and our unmet needs for self-worth. So I will just say that whether you consciously realize it or not, trading has an uncanny way of putting your self-worth on the line. And I think it happens in every single trade. And I would say in pretty much every moment along the trade as you're experiencing the trade. So here's some tips, some things to consider. One is that try to get your self-worth needs met outside of trading, not in your trading P&L. Okay. First of all, you need to understand what is your perception of your own self-worth, and that is hard to do on your own. But you can do that perhaps with someone who knows you really well, that you can be honest with, or you do it with a coach or someone like me or someone else, whatever. But you need to understand what is your level of self-worth for yourself. And then you need to realize that trying to meet those needs for self-worth is not, it's not good to do that in your trading. So get those self-worth needs met outside of trading, whether it's in a relationship, you have a dog, you got a hobby, you learn how to play guitar, whatever it is, but get your needs met elsewhere. Don't try and get them met with your P&L, because trying to do that means you're going to be in for a very rough ride on that roller coaster. You're going to be on the crazy ass roller coaster. It's going to be an e-ticket ride. I think e-ticket is the most extreme form of the Disney rides, if I'm not mistaken. It was been a long time since I've been there, but I think you know what I mean. Another thing you can consider doing for yourself is what I call a gratitude practice, which is while you're trading, is regularly write down what you're grateful for about whatever it may be, about yourself, about someone in your family, about life, about the weather, about your dog, about whatever it may be, and constantly savor those moments for yourself, because that will help to counterbalance the unmet needs that we all have all the time, that at some point will come out and take over. So it's really important. That's a whole nother area, gratitude, and I have a whole extensive thing that I do on that with my clients. But I'm going to move on to my final slide before we take the questions, John. And so here's my final slide, which is we are trading our own inner market as much as the one that we see on that screen, or for the old floor traders, the one you were, on the floor. I know I've been in Chicago on the floor there. I've also been in New York, not on the NYSE floor, but I've been on the NYMEX floor. I've had clients there. And we're just trading an intermarket, I think, as much, if not more so, than what we see on the screen. And the more and more that you realize this, the more you realize that you're trading your own intermarket, and the more you understand about your intermarket, the better chance you have in sustaining your success and not riding that crazy P&L roller coaster. And I will tell you that some tips for your intermarket. You know, we think of the market itself out there on the screen as there's support and resistance on the chart. Some of us think of it more as supply and demand. That's how I think of it. Or we apply all kinds of technical analysis to trading. And guess what? You can do the same thing to your intermarket, because there are certainly forces of supply and demand and resistance and support in your own intermarket. And if you can understand how that works for you, because that's what's actually interacting, your intermarket is what's interacting with the market you see on the screen. And I'll say that's what really represents those successful clients I mentioned who come to me already successful, not the ones that I can help become successful, but the ones who are already successful. They understand, they already had a sense of their intermarket. And that's really that's one of the big differences. They may not articulate it that way. They may not call it that, but that's what's happening for them. They've been able to sort of figure it out on their own to a certain degree. It's hard to do. Not many people do get there, but it does happen. With that, John, let's free up the time for questions. That's my last slide there.
All right, thank you very much, Doctor. There were a few things that you wanted that you mentioned that I just want to kind of go over in a kind of a speed round thing. First of all, thanks for calling us normal. We are traders. When you were talking about how, you know, equity curves kind of, they go up and then they kind of grind higher and they kind of fall fast. It's kind of how markets work, right? I mean, it always seems like bull markets take the stairs and bear markets take the elevator down. It just seems, you know, there's enough paradoxes in trading. There seems to be a bit of a parallel.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, actually, there's actually a quick little neurobiological reason for the stairs up, elevator down. There's an area of the brain that's there's different areas that seek patterns and that kind of turn on more when there's a pattern. And what happens is when that pattern breaks, like if you're seeing a market going up, going up, going up, you lock onto that as the pattern. When that pattern breaks, a different part of the brain, kind of the flight or flight area, kicks on. And then what happens is we have a very strong reaction. So people freak out when that pattern breaks. In my opinion, yeah, that's the neurobiology of why people, you know, the panic sets in much faster than the market ticking up. And so you'll see, that's why I believe that we see the stairs up, elevator down in markets and in P&L.
The one other thing you mentioned was, you know, if you get down a certain percentage of realized profits during a day, it seems to accelerate after a certain point. And I tend to call that, in myself, I call that when my switch gets flipped.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got to know
outside my strategy.
Yeah. And you got to, and it's like you said, John, you got to know where that switch is and when it's going to get flipped, and try and recognize when it is in the process of getting flipped. Really, that's the game. And
then there's always the what if factor. Like you get to that point and you're like, well, but what if the next trade's going to make me whole again? You get to that what if factor, it's time to walk away. Time to walk away, time to do some journaling, time to exactly. There's a lot of things you can do in that situation. But yeah, you're right. Time to step away. And in your slide on confidence, it kind of reminded me of, you know, real confidence, you said, is resilient, and it's probably quiet. False confidence is loud. It's kind of like the babbling brook runs shallow. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. I like that. I agree. And, you know, that tightrope between confidence and humility is something every trader is always wrestling with. Mm-hmm. Your slide on patterns, you know, it's not only the market patterns, it's our personal patterns. I try and tell everybody, every day you start from zero. Mm-hmm. You start from zero every day. It's a new day, so you don't know what's going to happen. When is enough enough? And that's one of the potential beauties of, right, being a short-term trader, right, is we have that opportunity to remake ourselves each day. You know, I have separate accounts. I've got my day trading account, which is separate from my swing, separate from my position accounts.
So in my day trading account, it's like I need to remake myself each day anew as the trader that I want to be.
It's
So
kind of refreshing.
yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
Huh. Your comment on lottery winners. I'm telling people all the time, if you can't manage money, making more isn't going to help.
Yeah, exactly. It's that roller coaster. Yeah.
And on your slide with the about amplification,
Hmm.
I think we're all guilty at one time or another, and to some degree, even still, of thinking maybe I'll get away with it this time.
Yeah, we all are. And you know, one of the funny things, John, I learned some of that from a old friend of mine I haven't talked to in a long time, who used to be a professional poker player, who taught me, I learned from him, because that's how professional poker players, the better ones who create an actual long career out of it, they recognize that in themselves as well, because sometimes they kind of go for it and then they get lucky, but they realize what's happened, and the better ones understand it and they don't do it as much, right? So that's how I first learned about that, actually, was from a poker pro.
And P&L not equaling your personal worth. So
Hmm.
difficult, yet so important.
Yeah, that's why we got to be having other things in our life besides spending everything looking at charts and markets, right? You got to have a fulfilling life, whether it's, hopefully through relationships, family and friends, as well as fulfilling activities for yourself and taking care of your body as well. It's all part of it.
Well, as a fellow guitarist, I feel it. All right,
Yeah.
let's get to the questions from the people that have come out for us today. The first one is from James. He says, I'm far more successful on a sim account compared to my live account. I've observed that a lot has to do with cutting losses early on the live account. As a result, I end up nickel and diming myself into a big negative number. Do you have any suggestions or techniques to stop the fear of loss from affecting my trades?
Well, I mean, you're never going to stop the fear of loss, right? Nobody wants to lose. So I would say the first thing is to accept that fear of loss is normal. And then after you normalize that for yourself, I would say that you need to start doing some what I call it drill down writing, which is a form of live journaling, which is not about what happened a few minutes ago and writing about it, but actually you have a little notebook, which I always do when I'm trading, and you start writing exactly about that fear of loss right as you're experiencing it. That's one of the best things you can do. One of the very best things you can do is put that internal experience, the fear, the emotion, put it into words on paper. What am I feeling? Feeling I'm afraid. I don't want to book this loss and then see it turn around in my direction, or I don't want to book this loss because it's going to put me in the hole, or whatever it is, right? Write it out, put it in words, and then keep writing as much as you can. What else is going on connected to this fear of loss? There's no right or wrong in the writing, but I'm just going to tell you, the more you can put whatever is going on in your inner market, which is your emotions, into words on paper, the less chance you're going to have of acting it out. Second thing I'll just say is, the huge difference, of course, between sim and live. Everyone trades differently in sim. Pretty much everyone trades better on sim, although strangely enough, a lot of people do crazy things on sim because they think they can get away with it because it's not real money. Then they have bad habits when they move to live. But even if that's not the case, live trading involves cash and involves real money. And so not only is our self-worth on the line, but our financial worth is actually on the line as well. So it's a whole different ballgame.
It's a whole level of duress that doesn't exist in sim.
Right, exactly.
All right, thank you for that, Doctor. All right, next one. Usually institutional traders are different from retail ones. Is there a level where psychology becomes irrelevant because of the gunpowder, data information access, and so on, making your mind less vital?
No, not at all. It's the psychology never becomes irrelevant. But what does happen is the issues that they are wrestling with changes. They're not necessarily the same issues. It may not be about entries and exits so much. It may be about adding and trimming. It may be about portfolio management. It may be managing client expectations. It may be about managing their own energy and their cognitive workload. Um, and accepting loss and FOMO is definitely a part of it. That no one is immune to that. But on an institutional level, regardless of how big the trader is, and I've worked with some really big trading desks, it doesn't matter. The psychological issues are always there. They're just a different set of issues. Again, a big one would be, a lot of these institutional traders are not, it's not black and white. They're not in or out. They're always in, or they're to some degree, and it's, are they going to be adding or trimming to this, and how are they going to adjust, and what's their risk on versus risk off posture? And then there's really big decisions around that. And so that's a lot of psychology. It's a different kind of psychology than a day trader who's deciding whether I should get in or out of the futures right now, or in and out of the stock right now. So answer the question is, the psychological issues are definitely there. It's just often a different set of them.
All right, thank you, Esteban, for the question, and thanks, Doc, for the answer. Next question is two-part kind of. It's from David. Do you have drills we can do to mitigate the pitfalls of trading, and do those subconscious mantras actually help with those pitfalls?
Oh, the subconscious mantras. I'm going to interpret this question as somebody is maybe asking about affirmations. And I will say that, there's this idea out there that, whatever we say to ourselves and the thoughts we have will create our reality, kind of the law of attraction thing. And while I think there's a certain degree of that, which is true, what a lot of people miss out on is that it doesn't mean that whatever we put in our head is going to happen. And moreover, if you're someone who's only trying to plant positive statements in your head, what's happening is you're actually, in a way, you're not leaving enough room in there. You're kind of trying to bury under the sand all the fears and anxieties that are there naturally anyways. And you're going to have to deal with them anyway. So I would say, rather than trying to plant subconscious mantras in your mind, which I'm not against that, that's perfectly fine. But if you do that, you need to also not try and cover up what else is in there. Because the reason why affirmations don't work for most people is because the subconscious mind, your level of self-worth on that subconscious level, does not believe those statements you're making to yourself. So there's a whole, I can talk for hours about that. So I'm not against the mantras or anything, but they're basically, in and of themselves, are usually 99% of the time not going to be enough to do the trick.
And coming from a long line of liars to yourself, I've lied to myself quite a bit. I have a question from Otto, my Norse friend here. A great distinction between temporary confidence and real confidence. Is there a resilience based on belief in the underlying process?
Boy, I'll see if I can interpret that question. There's a lot of ways. So yes, do you have a belief in your underlying process around your trading strategy? There's that level of belief in underlying process. And then I would say that you can also develop a belief in the process of yourself. Do you have self-trust, right? Which is really what I talk more about when I work in my coaching practice. Is I don't talk so much about strategy with traders. In fact, I try and avoid that. I'm not there to tell them what to do or what not to do, but I'm there to help them develop self-trust in themselves. So trusting in the process. Just a little side note, one of the things that very often the biggest and best traders that come to me who want assistance, people who are really successful, what they're often looking for is how can they recognize more and more and develop their intuition and differentiate that from their emotional reaction. And that's a big part of that is self-trust in your own internal process and recognizing what's going on inside of you. So yeah, trusting the process, whether it's your trading process, what you're doing and your strategy and how you look at the market, as well as your internal process. Yeah, trust in the process is important for sure.
I've often told people, you tell me you have a strategy and then you don't follow the strategy. How are you going to know if your strategy is good if you don't follow it?
Yeah, and everyone, I think to various degrees, I know it applies to me and every trader I've ever known, right? We veer from our strategy at times, some of us more than others, but there are some people who just have a really hard time following it much at all. And those folks, I think, need to probably back up and not trade for a little bit until they can really get their arms around it.
That's a confidence issue too, right?
Yeah. Sorry, what was that? I missed what you just said, John.
It's a confidence issue there too, right?
Yeah, the real confidence in yourself. Yeah, the resilience, being able to handle the adversity. Here's a quick little thing I'll say too. One of the things that I've noticed, and this is not, I don't think, true of everybody out there, but an interesting common factor I've seen in a lot of the very best traders that I know personally in my coaching practice, or I've just known personally in my life. It's not true of all of them, but a large majority of them have dealt with some type of extreme adversity early in their life and learned how to be resilient around it. And so they have inside of them this ability to be resilient that they were able to bring with them into trading. And I see that with a lot of the traders who I know that were already successful. And it's probably one of the most common attributes that I see, actually. Not to say that if you had an easy life and never had adversity, you're not going to succeed, but there's actually an advantage to having some of that. As I know I did, I had a lot of adversity growing up. You learn about resilience. Some of us develop more adaptive coping strategies and styles to deal with that, to create the resilience, and some of us develop more maladaptive strategies, those defense mechanisms that don't always work for us. But it's a really big deal.
Well, that explains a lot about how some of the, there were a lot of tough kids and a lot of tough people in the S&P pit that started
Oh yeah.
in, not such great situations. And I always kind of felt like, this is a person who is really trying to persevere and has already persevered something in their life. Well, kind of like I've been to jail and I'm not afraid to go back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've had an AK-47 pointed at me for 4 hours once by someone who was pretty much out of their mind. I thought for sure I was going to be dead.
Oh my goodness.
I used to surf a lot. I was almost had a near-death experience on a big wave in Puerto Rico many years ago. And plus just growing up as a kid, which I won't get into the details of that, but I've been through a lot of just crap, a lot of heavy stuff. And I think when you learn how to become resilient, and you can bring it with you when you're trading, it's golden.
Wow. I want to hear about that wave one of these times. We've got a question here from, and thanks, Otto, for the question. We got a question here from Andrew, but I'm not sure where the context is. He's saying this means no celebrations while working, stuff like that.
Boy, that's a good question. I think that I don't want to give a black and white answer, like saying yes or no to that. To everything in psychology, it's all gray to degrees of. But I think you need to temper the in the moment celebrations. Of course, we all feel great, when something goes our way, right? And I think it's fine to, instead of maybe celebrate, I think maybe a moment of gratitude and appreciation, especially, and this is a big check mark here, I'm going to underscore, especially if you had followed your process, if it was a good quality decision-making process that led to that positive outcome, then yeah, a moment of some celebration in the form of gratitude can be helpful. But if you're just fist pumping all the time, every time you make money, I don't think that's that wise. Another way to look at it too is when you're done with trading, then you go back and I know it sort of sounds bad to use the word memorialize, but go back and memorialize what you did well and write about what you did well and celebrate it then when you're done too.
Review it.
Different ways to deal with it. Yeah, relive it, exactly. But celebrating in the moment, to some degree it's okay. I'm not completely against it, but just be careful on how you do it. And I like to do it in the form of gratitude and appreciation rather than like, look how great I am or look how awesome that was, because that can lead us to get over our skis very quickly.
Do you remember in Star Wars when Luke Skywalker was on the Millennium Falcon and they had all those TIE fighters flying around him and he finally shot one and he yells back to Han Solo and says, "I got one." And Han Solo says, "Great kid, don't get cocky."
Yeah, there you go. Great illustration, man. Great example, John. Good one. Yeah.
So Andrew, thank you, and again, as always, thank you, Doctor, for the great question, for the great answers. Otto, my Norse friend, is asking, how can we train or build our subconscious to not only seek and accept our goals, but also to drive us to achieve our goals?
Yeah. Okay. Another really, hard to answer it in a quick soundbite, but So working with the subconscious is really, I'm going to address that as part of the question. Now I'm just going to say it's not easy to do because we have this thing called an ego, which is kind of the insulation around our subconscious. It's what makes it hard to understand really what's in our subconscious. Our ego does not want us to know what's in our subconscious. So, um, you know, this is why working on ourselves is really important. Some people, mindfulness meditation, learning a new activity from the very beginning, like becoming a musician or learning a new sport or a new thing from that Zen beginner's mind, and learning about your own, um, um, strengths and weaknesses. It's also very helpful to have another person, a guide, like a coach or someone that you really have confidence in and that you trust, that you can be open with, because it's extremely, extremely tricky to work with the subconscious by yourself. And there's a reason why elite athletes and a lot of elite traders, pretty much every elite athlete, and not all elite traders, but a lot of them have a coach. There's a reason, because they recognize that the ego, and the subconscious are really tricky. In fact, there was this not a funny, but a great video I once saw, a little YouTube thing. I think it was from an old poker movie. It might have been Revolver or Rounders, one of those poker movies. I'm probably getting it. One of those two. This little clip about kind of how insidious our ego is. And it's so hard to understand, when it's the ego talking to us or not. And so it's tricky to deal with the subconscious by yourself. And I'll say trying to do the whole self-hypnosis thing, boy, I wish I had $1 for every trader over the years that's emailed me and telling me how self-hypnosis helped them for a short while, but then all the problems returned. It's because you're not actually getting into the deepest recesses of the subconscious. If you're working, just doing the self, it's kind of like a feedback loop is what happens.
You could do that.
Some people, yes, yeah. I mean, some people get a little lift from it temporarily. I've seen that a lot, actually. I've seen a lot of people will get a nice temporary, improvement from doing some self-hypnosis. But what often happens, usually within weeks, if not a month or two, usually 3 or 4 weeks after stopping it, or even if they continue it, the self-worth issues, the deepest fears around whether I'm good enough, handsome enough, tall enough, rich enough, smart enough, fast enough, all the enoughs, all that stuff is very deep in the subconscious, and it's very difficult to address that through something like self-hypnosis or through affirmations.
Well, now I guess maybe I do self-hypnotize every night. I go to sleep.
Well, sleeping is interesting. That's, it was Freud had said the unconscious, the dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. And so, keeping a dream journal, do you see recurring themes or patterns in your dreams? Some people don't remember their dreams. There's nothing wrong with that. There's different reasons for that. But if you are someone who remembers your dreams, keep a dream journal and start looking for patterns and themes. And I think you'll start noticing that there are patterns. And some of these patterns and or themes, start to become aware of them in your dreams. And I think you'll start to notice something about yourself that you probably never learned before.
I've been having a recurring dream. I'm in the S&P pit and I get an order to sell 1,000 contracts, and I turn to the pit and there's nobody in it. And compliance is standing right next to me.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one, John. I know I've had crazy dreaming trades about dreams as well myself. I know. I mean, my wife, I went through a period back in like the fall of 2008 when the markets really became unhinged and things were just going crazy. In that September, October, November, we had the huge first time the markets had those giant swings. I was waking up in the middle of the night with like a dream about the market. It would wake me up, and I'd come into my trading office here in my house, and like my wife, like, "What are you doing?" And it was really for about 3 or 4 weeks. I was having these incredible market dreams, and a lot of them, what I would dreamed about actually played out. I didn't always act on it because I was wondering if I should
next
or not.
time.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't know. It was like as an issue of self-trust for me. I didn't know. Was this like my fantasy or is it real? Some of them, I did act out on a little bit on them, which was okay, which was good. But a lot of them, I was like, what the hell's going on here? It was some crazy stuff. Yeah. And so sometimes I will have dreams about markets. So if you ever dream about money or markets, pay attention to that. Or just anything closely resembling self-worth. Or if you're good enough, those are important dreams to take notice of.
Thank you. All right, we're getting a little long here. Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
Okay, Mid Charles here. Hi, Andrew. I feel my real confidence is misused. Big losing days can be reversed sometimes, fueling the bad habit of reversing big days instead of taking small losses. I know this is damaging, but I find the hardest thing for me to accept is a small loss. How do I build a stable inner market? Will accepting small gains count as being grateful and help change a bad habit?
Yeah, so a lot there in that question. So the last thing they said, yeah, that's a great start. Start memorializing, journaling, write down how grateful you actually are, and try not to BS yourself. Try and find some actual appreciation for some small gains or accepting a small loss. Write about it in real time. That's one way you can start doing it on your own without someone like me there helping you. Start doing that actively. Have a dedicated notebook. Go out to CVS, Walgreens, whatever. Get one of those little composition notebooks. Have it there by your computer. Have a pen. And I'll say do it with your hand, not keyboard it. Okay, there's a whole nother reason which I won't get into. It's too long, but it's better to handwrite it out than keyboard it, and start to write down that you appreciated the ability to take that small loss before you feel the need to try and recover it. That's something you can do on your own, right? There's other things you can do working with someone like me, but on your own, that would be a great place to start.
Thank you, Doctor. I didn't mean to give you a big long question for the last one there.
Well, these are great questions, though.
They really are. They really are, and there's a whole bunch of them. But I know you've got things you need to do. We really appreciate the time you spent with us. If we didn't get to your question today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm deeply sorry about that. But the good doctor will be here 2 weeks from today, same bad time, same bad channel. We'll have a different kind of main theme on it. But doctor, I'm trying to find my clap track here on my phone. Thank you so much for the time today.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It was really great to be back doing market therapy with you, John.
It always just makes me so, I don't know, I feel comforted when I have the opportunity to spend time talking to you, and I just have this feeling tomorrow's going to be a good trading day.
I hope that's the case for all of us. Yeah.
So thank you all for attending. Again, Doctor, thank you so much for your time. Getting a lot of thanks and everything on the chat here. Looking forward to talking to you again very soon. Trade well. Best to you. Best to your family. Everybody, stay safe. Stay clean. Wash your hands.
Yeah.
So you can be here with us next time.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Doctor. Blessings to everybody.